Before humans had heavy tanks, supersonic jets, and machine guns, they still had 1,000 ways to kill each other. War sits at the core of most human history, and the weapons we've been wielding for thousands of years have been wildly creative and, honestly, kind of insane. From a cannon so massive it nearly drove its own soldiers mad, to a fancy ancient heat ray that could torch entire ships, here are the 15 most feared and freakish weapons in ancient history. Number 15. Trireme. The trireme was a fast and lethal warship used by the Phoenicians, Greeks, and Romans. Its name comes from the 3 stacked rows of oars, each row manned by a single rower. These ships were designed with speed in mind. Lighter builds allowed them to glide across the water and strike hard before an enemy could react. In sea battles, 2 tactics dominated: boarding and ramming. The trireme specialized in both. Its sharp prow was built to smash holes into opposing ships, flooding their lower decks and sending rowers to a watery grave. Once the ramming was done, the attacking crew would board the wrecked vessel and fight the survivors in brutal hand-to-hand combat. These ships weren't just tools, they were floating weapons, honed for warfare. Every element, from their tight construction to the formation of rowers, was built for speed, precision, and death. And in naval combat, that's what counted most. Number 14. Basilic Cannon. This cannon was built for one job only: to tear down the walls of Constantinople. So, did it work? Let's break it down. Cast in 1453, this huge Turkish siege cannon is 27 feet long and was such a beast, it had to be hauled by teams of oxen. Forged entirely from bronze, it tipped the scales at over 40,000 pounds. That made the basilic the largest artillery piece of its day and easily the loudest. When fired, it spewed fire and smoke, launching 1,200-pound stone balls nearly a mile. Sounds cool, right? It was, sort of. The issue was that this monster took hours to reload and even longer to prep for firing. At best, it could fire maybe 7 times. It terrified enemies, sure, but it also terrified the crew. The deafening noise rattled nerves, and any wrong move near it could mean death. When it was finally fired, the gunners just ran and hoped they'd survive the blast. Number 13. War Elephant. You don't need a PhD to understand it. Exactly as the name suggests, a war elephant was an actual trained elephant used in battle. These massive animals were especially prominent in warfare across ancient India, though some evidence points to their presence in China as well. The elephants were tamed by professional handlers, taught to carry soldiers, and trained to obey commands during full-on combat. When deployed on the field, they charged, rammed, and trampled anything in their path. Even a peaceful elephant can be unpredictable, but one trained for destruction? That's something no foot soldier wants to face. During their mating season, male elephants became even more dangerous. Hyped up on hormones and looking to assert dominance, they'd turn into unstoppable wrecking balls. If 2 bulls locked eyes in this state, it meant chaos. There was very little anyone could do to counter their force. As long as elephants were in play, the battlefield was always a gamble. One wrong move, and you were gone. Number 12. Chinese Repeating Crossbow. This deadly gadget came from ancient China during the Warring States period. Unlike standard models, this one combined loading, spanning, and shooting into one continuous motion. That meant it could fire quickly, even if the bolts were weaker. Though it lacked military-grade power, it was still pretty dangerous, and the key was poison. Tips were often dipped in toxic brews like tiger-killing poison, turning even a shallow hit into a death sentence. These weapons weren't just for soldiers. Women, guards, and even commoners used them for home defense or hunting. Simple to operate, brutally efficient, and when poisoned, absolutely lethal. The weapon wasn't flashy, but it didn't need to be. It was stealthy, repeatable, and perfect for quick, close-range attacks. One shot to draw blood, and the toxin did the rest. In a world of blades and brute force, the repeating crossbow was more like a slow-burn death trap, quiet, clever, and undeniably lethal. Number 11. Falcata. The falcata was a brutal and beautiful sword from pre-Roman Iberia, used across the peninsula from the 5th to 1st centuries BCE. Though the original name is lost to history, falcata comes from the curved shape of the blade, similar to the Greek kopis, which was designed for slicing power. What set the Iberian blade apart was its dual-edge build, one side curved and razor-sharp for slashing, the other flat and reinforced for heavier impact. These swords weren't just deadly, they were pieces of craftsmanship. The curved handle often ended in a stylized animal, usually a horse or bird, molded from bronze. These blades weren't mass-produced either. Each had a personal touch. Used by warriors trained in up-close battle, the falcata could pierce armor, cut deeply, and deal major damage with minimal swing. It wasn't just a weapon, it was a symbol of raw personal combat and Iberian identity before the Romans took over. Number 10. Scythed chariot. Ancient armies had no shortage of horrific tools of war, but few were as bloodthirsty in design as the scythed chariot. Used in ancient Greece and Rome, this battle cart came rigged with actual scythe blades bolted to its wheels, and yes, they were every bit as lethal as they sound. Picture armored war horses pulling a chariot packed with weapon-wielding soldiers. Now add spinning blades slicing out from the axle hubs as it plows through ranks of infantry. These weren't just for show. The sharp steel arms at the sides turned the chariot into a moving blender. And just in case anyone survived that first impact, extra blades were fitted beneath the driver's seat, so even getting run over meant getting hacked apart. It was shock, speed, and slaughter bundled together in one vicious machine. Whether for intimidation or carnage, the scythed chariot wasn't subtle. It was a scream across the battlefield, and everyone heard it. What's your take on this? Number 9. Catapult. Before gunpowder changed warfare forever, the catapult was the go-to machine for long-range destruction. It hurled heavy objects, stones, fireballs, sometimes even diseased corpses, straight into enemy territory. The earliest models appeared around the 7th century BCE, reportedly used to launch stones from Jerusalem's walls. But the Greeks and Romans are the ones who truly weaponized the catapult. They didn't stop at simple rock flingers. They built variants that could launch javelins, spears, and flaming projectiles. These siege engines relied on tension and torque, storing massive amounts of force in twisted rope or wood arms before releasing that energy in one brutal shot. The payload could destroy walls, knock down defenses, or break morale in seconds. Some versions looked like oversized crossbows, firing arrows the size of flagpoles. These machines weren't just for show, they were psychological warfare. When you saw one wheeled into position, you knew something behemoth and deadly was about to fly. Number 8. Steam cannon. The steam cannon, well, yes, powered by actual steam, was another wild invention credited to Archimedes. Developed during the Roman siege of Syracuse around 214 BCE, this device used a metal cylinder heated in a furnace. One end was sealed with a projectile. Water was added to the other. When the water turned to vapor from the heat, pressure exploded out of the projectile like a bullet. It sounds like science fiction, but the Greeks may have actually gotten it to work. The setup was simple, but the concept was ahead of its time. Archimedes didn't just defend the city with ropes and pulleys, he tried thermal pressure weapons too. Later, during the 19th century, steam cannons were reattempted, with mixed results. A Russian model built between 1826 and 1829 was said to fire 50 balls per minute. Still, for the ancient world, Archimedes' steam cannon was an early leap into what we'd now call battlefield engineering. Number 7. Epsilon axe. The epsilon axe got its name from its resemblance to the Greek letter epsilon, and it earned a bloody reputation across the Middle East, Eastern Europe, and even ancient Egypt. This weapon wasn't elegant or prestigious. It was the grunt's tool, heavy, durable, and brutally effective. Historians often refer to it as the poor man's kopis, suggesting it was issued to lower-ranking infantry instead of more refined blades. But don't underestimate it. The Epsilon axe was built to break shields, shatter bones, and cleave straight through limbs. Its simple structure made it easy to forge, and its wide arc turned it into a limb-chopping menace in chaotic combat. Ancient Egyptian inscriptions show soldiers gripping similar axes, using them in mass formations. While not glamorous, the Epsilon axe had one job: wreck everything in its path. And in the madness of war, sometimes that's all you need: swing, smash, and simply move on. Number 6. Khopesh. This was a terrifying Egyptian blade curved like a sickle, designed to blend the chopping power of an axe with the slicing edge of a sword. Most were between 20 and 24 inches long, and their crescent shape offered versatile combat functions. The inner curve could hook shields or limbs, while the sharpened edge was perfect for cutting down enemies in close-range combat. Its design evolved from earlier battle axes, refined into a weapon fit for slicing through chaos on the battlefield. Depictions of the khopesh date back to around 2500 BCE, making it one of the oldest known sword types in history. This was no ceremonial prop. It was a weapon made for carnage. Soldiers wielding khopeshis weren't trying to duel gracefully. They were maiming and disabling as efficiently as possible. Its unique look and deadly power made it a symbol of Egypt's military strength and a staple in the blood-stained clashes of the ancient world. All right, now, let's move to number 5. Greek fire. This ancient monster resembled an early flamethrower, and it was devastating. The Byzantine Empire was surrounded by enemies, and Greek fire was one of their fiercest defenses. Its formula was a closely guarded state secret, passed only from emperor to emperor until the empire's fall in 1453. That secrecy means nobody today knows exactly how it was made, but we do know it worked. Greek fire burned on water, stuck to ships, and couldn't be extinguished with ordinary methods. It played a huge role in keeping the Byzantines afloat, literally, for over 700 years. Other incendiary tools like fire arrows and pitch pots were common, but Greek fire was in a league of its own. Launched in clay pots or sprayed through primitive siphons, it lit up enemy fleets in seconds. The only known defense was soaking thick leather or fabric in vinegar. It stank, sure, but it was better than being reduced to ash. Does it scare you? Well, it should. Number 4. Gladius. The gladius was the primary blade used by Roman foot soldiers from the 3rd century BCE until the 3rd century CE. This compact and beautiful sword became a standard-issue weapon for Roman legionaries and was carried along with a large shield known as the scutum, javelins called pila, and a short dagger called the pugio. In later periods, they even had throwing darts. The pila were meant to be hurled first, disabling enemy shields and armor. Then, soldiers charged in, using the gladius in brutal close-quarters combat. If the name sounds familiar, it should. The word gladiator comes directly from gladius, meaning swordsman. Even the flower gladiolus gets its name from its sword-like leaves. Sleek, efficient, and easy to wield, the gladius wasn't a showy blade. It was a stabbing machine. Designed for tight formations and up-close kills, it played a central role in Rome's battlefield dominance for hundreds of years. Number 3. Mons Meg. It might sound like a strange name, but this was a monstrous gun built to satisfy the ambitions of Philip the Good, Duke of Burgundy, in 1449. He then presented it to James II of Scotland, because obviously, who hasn't received a gigantic cannon as a royal gift? This was medieval Europe, and nothing said diplomacy like heavy artillery. Mons Meg wasn't just large, it was the biggest of its era, boasting a 20-inch bore, making it one of the largest caliber bombards ever forged. It was used successfully in sieges until the mid-16th century, before being wheeled out mostly for ceremonial use. That changed in 1680 when it burst during a celebratory firing, ending its active days. It sat for decades at Edinburgh Castle, gathering dust and tripping tourists, until it was sent to the Tower of London in 1754. In 1829, it was finally returned to Scotland, restored, and placed back in its castle home. And let's say, it's for the good. Number 2. Chariot. The chariot remains one of the most iconic inventions of the ancient world. At its core, it was a lightweight cart pulled by horses, but unlike the slow, rural versions we might picture, this was built for speed and war. Although Romans are often associated with chariots, they didn't invent them. Archaeological evidence shows chariots dating back as far as 1950 to 1880 BCE, particularly in the Sintashta culture of modern-day Russia. These war machines were often buried in the graves of high-status individuals. On the battlefield, chariots offered fast mobility and a platform for archers or spear throwers. Later, as cavalry became more effective, the chariot's military use declined. But it didn't disappear. It lived on in racing, ceremonial displays, and transportation. For centuries, the chariot was a battlefield game changer. Whether storming across flat terrain or leading parades, it left a deep mark on warfare, politics, and public spectacle alike. Its legacy still echoes through military history. All right, guys, let's end this with number 1, Archimedes' heat ray. In ancient Greece, Archimedes engineered something completely outrageous, a heat ray that supposedly ignited Roman ships during the siege of Syracuse between 214 and 212 BCE. The concept? A series of polished bronze mirrors arranged to reflect sunlight into a blazing focal point, turning raw solar energy into a deadly beam. It's been hotly debated whether this thing actually worked, since Archimedes didn't document it himself. But in 1973, researchers gave it a go with 70 copper-coated mirrors aimed at a plywood replica of a Roman galley. Shockingly, it burst into flames. That gave new weight to the old stories. So maybe this wasn't just ancient science fiction. The idea of torching enemy ships using only sunlight and geometry, that's not just clever, that's villain-level genius. Whether or not it was ever used in real combat, the legend of the Archimedes heat ray still burns bright. And honestly, setting boats on fire with the sun, that's pure pyromaniac brilliance. We hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please like it, share it, and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.